look alive. Wouldn't want you to miss this war.
We're giving hand-me-down planes.
I feel like I'm flying my grandfather's Buick.
They got us out here using planes to mop floors, fellas.
Get your head up, son. You're fighter pilots.
Train, 11 o'clock.
It's military.
Let's give those newspapers something to write about.
Damn, I feel like I let my people down, man. You know, I didn't get.
What did you do?
What did you direct this movie?
I didn't even want to see the movie because I was going to be heartbroken. You know, I was ready to go see this movie. I want to believe that black man can fly. And then I started hearing all these bad reviews saying that the movie's hokey, the dialogue is sappy, the music is overbearing, the dog fights are cool, but outside of that, there's nothing else.
Corey, the white man strikes again.
So what happens, George Lucas is like, it's really important that we tell this story. The pilots, a group of all black airmen, the truth is they were ultra badasses and they changed everything. He's like, we got to tell this story, but I also want to tell it like a really crappy 50s comic book.
Yeah.
I like, what? Why would you do that?
Well, I knew there was going to be trouble when the reports were coming out about how he was like, man, Hollywood's a bunch of assholes. I'm trying to make a movie about black people and nobody will distribute it and treat it like the way I want it. And I was like, you know, that kind of whining usually means there's a different problem.
Right.
Tyler Perry's going, don't tell me your problems.
I told y'all the moment I didn't see Denzel Washington in this cast, I knew that this movie was doomed, man.
When the biggest black actors you can get are Cuba Gooding Jr. and this year Terrence Howard, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, I'm just scared that George Lucas has now become the Negro menace because it's like, oh man, you know, it's great that the guy's like fighting to get, you know, the movie made, which apparently it took him like 20 years to try to get this thing off the ground. Where I'm like, well, damn, I mean, how can you really piss on this guy? He's like, he's trying where nobody else gives a shit. And then when you see the movie, you're like, maybe you should have just left that alone.
Yeah, you know, it'd be funny if like George Lucas was really a racist, and this is a way of sabotaging that story.
Oh, hey, that guy has enough problems right now.
Yeah, instead of I don't know. First it was Jar Jar Binks. Now he's fucking this up.
There were points watching this I was wondering that myself. I felt like it was the supporting cast of Fat Albert in World War II.
I was actually waiting for Jar Jar Binks to be in one of the planes. Oh, me so scared, man.
There was the one guy who's like, he's like the guy with a hat who mumbles everything.
Yeah.
Fat Albert.
Mushmouth, you mean?
Yeah, Mushmouth. It's Mushmouth. It's flying a plane.
Hey, but everybody, we gonna go fight a hibble.
We gonna be able to fight at this time?
I'm looking around going, like, so what you're saying is that these highly qualified military trained pilots all talk like they just came out of the ghetto, pretty much. That's what you're telling me.
No,
all talking constant street lingo.
No. Okay, well, the thing is, I'll give the movie credit for this. It didn't have them like pull. The whole cast didn't end up pulling Will Smiths during this movie. It's like, oh no, you didn't. You know?
Oh hell no.
Yeah, and I mean, they actually. I mean, the dialogue what was there. I'm like, well, you know what? They're not making these guys stereotypes or just ridiculous, which I appreciated. But the thing is that I was like, part of me was going, maybe they should have given them some Will Smith dialogue just to give him some personality.
But I couldn't
because the biggest problem with this movie is that some of these guys, I mean, and it wasn't their fault. It was the dialogue's fault. The dialogue was so wooden that it was screaming Phantom Menace a lot of the time.
Well, that's the thing is, I think that the problem is that they were just caricatures, really. I mean, it was wooden dialogue built around characters who were almost non-existent. They were so cliched and so, at points, just over the top, but not entertainingly so. You know?
I have to disagree with you, too. I mean, you guys are making some good points about the film, certainly, with the dialogue and how poorly it's written. I mean, I don't know. At this point, I feel like if I go into a George Lucas movie, I know that's going to be the case. And so I was braced for something a lot worse. But with the characters, I'm with you, co-host, where I was like, all right, I had the exact thought. I was like, here we go, Fat Albert in the gang flying planes. But I was like, you know what? These characters, despite this dialogue, some of these guys are really managing to rise above it and give their characters a little bit more dimension. I mean, you get a bunch of characters, and normally with this, I was like, right off the bat, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to know who these guys are. But by an hour in, I was like, you know what? I can pick out each and every one of them and know what they're about. And some of them are kind of interesting. Like they focus on the character Lightning, played by David. I don't remember screw up his name.
David Oyelowo or something.
Yeah, he was the black guy on MI5, and he was in Planet of the Apes. And I dug him a lot. I mean, I like the fact that they focused on him, and he was one of the better actors who had a story going. When it started, I was like, it's too bad this has turned out to be the kind of crap I expected it to be. Matter of fact, right off the bat, the titles on it are so cheap looking. They look like a TV movie
It
from
really
the 70s.
did, from the 70s.
You're
absolutely right.
I was like, wait, George Lucas worked on this?
In the thick of battle, you have like titles coming across, like not even being presented like in a decent way. They're being presented like you would present them at the beginning of Battlestar Galactica
the
or the
original
Incredible Hulk.
Battlestar
the original
Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say like being that it was black pilots and those titles looked like they were from the 70s. It was like a black exploitation movie, and it opened up with them like, "We gonna get that jive ass Hitler,
Yeah, it has a chef on.
jive turkey ass Nazis."
No, not at all.
baby.
This wasn't a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Which you know what?
would have done that.
And maybe the movie
proud of it.
the movie would have had a kick-ass soundtrack, and maybe it would have made a little bit more sense. But it
Maybe
just
not
seemed like
more
the opening
sense,
sequence
but-
just kind of it felt like an afterthought. You know?
Yeah, it did.
Well, you know, I wish I could agree with the little things you're saying. You're like, even though it's not a good movie, you like those things. Because I didn't. I thought almost everything in this movie was terrible. I mean, and part of it is that I just saw that HBO movie, The Tuskegee Airmen, with Lawrence Fishburne and Cuba Gooding Jr. once again. That's a great movie. It really is. And it tells these stories of these guys in a very respectful but still dramatic and interesting way. And not one of them is like this crazy lingo swapping party guy the way these guys are presented. They're all seem like realistic people who would be in the military and be the best pilots and some of the best pilots in the world.
Well, this is where I would my argument to that would be we already have that movie that you're talking about, which is not that old, just came out on Blu-ray, is a superior movie in every stretch of the imagination. I just felt like this was going for a different theme,
It was.
or a different type of audience who would be
agree.
more into like they want to see the guys clown around a
I
bit.
just don't think it worked.
I mean, we know that this is true history, but we also
True-ish.
that's what I'm saying. We know that this is based on historical figures. This is based on a piece of history, but we also know that when we have it in a movie, it's exaggerated a little bit. And I'm looking at the core story right here. Being that this is World War II, this is set in the heart of it, 1944, and the Pentagon is forced to make these black pilots who are, I guess, first time. This is their first time really going into battle. They have no choice but to put them into the fight. And why is that?
Well, let's see. With one of them is because the white pilots are such glory boys that they keep screwing up the mission. So it's almost like they say, like, look, we need some guys who are willing to stay and do their job, even though it means getting killed. And so, could you guys get out there and do that?
That's the thing that's insinuated here. And like I said, I haven't read a book about this or anything, so I can't say for sure. But in the other film, that's not the case at all. They're like, we're just running out of fucking pilots, really. You know, I mean, it's World War II.
Yeah.
which is the main case.
Yeah, and getting towards this all happened towards the end of the war, right? So it was like in both films, the climax is the bombing raid on Berlin, which was a huge deal, especially considering that in real life they were the accompanying flight with the bombers that bombed Berlin. And it's like, wow, that was a huge honor, and were requested by the white bombers because they were such badasses.
So, at all costs, under every circumstance, you protect the heavies.
Colonel, we signed up to shoot Germans, not babysit planes.
You signed up to follow orders. One bomber, that's 10 men. You getting one Jerry so you can put a cross on your plane. That doesn't balance that. We count our victories by the bombers we get to their targets, by the husbands we return to their wives, by the fathers we get back to their children. What has not changed, what will never change, from the last plane to the last bullet to the last minute to the last man we fight, we fight.
Yes, sir. No, they were like the D team.
Before they got them, they were trying to train dogs, and then monkeys. And they finally just gave up and said, "All right, we'll let the niggers." What the
Oh my god!
You know what? Damn.
Are you emphasizing on flying monkeys? Right
I know. I know. You know what?
You're gonna get us in trouble.
It's funny because I was just thinking that because this script is written. A lot of people telling us, man, you don't know who wrote this script, and it's
two cartoonists.
Yeah,
Aaron Magruder and John Ridley.
Magruder.
And John Ridley was the one who wrote Undercover Brother.
And Aaron Magruder, everybody knows him from the Boondocks, and that's why I thought it was funny because I thought they would have had Uncle Ruckus in there. Like, what am I watching now? The Wizard of Oz? 'Cause I don't see nothing but a bunch of flying monkeys.
And that's kind of the shocking thing. Yeah, God damn you, Magruder. But yeah, I mean, yeah, knowing that those guys took a part, actually like participated in the script, I'm wondering like how much of their stuff like actually survived the actual script because there's times when scripts can just go missing.
Exactly.
And the studio has no choice but to still slap the names on.
Yeah, especially with someone who likes to get involved and mess around as much as George Lucas, who is the producer.
The pilots flying the Air Fortresses, they had by far the worst, and I'm talking about the worst lines, the worst delivery I've ever heard in a film.
Well, I mean, you've even got, all right, so they've got halfway decent CG for the dogfights, right?
Yeah.
But they spend half their time just on tight shots of these guys in the cockpits, just obviously on the back of a car somewhere that people are moving back and forth. And it just felt awkward. Like I never really felt like I was watching these guys in the air at all.
You know what? What you're saying, I felt like that with the first dogfight. It wasn't until later, like the one in the middle with the bombers and some of the other stuff when they were flying. Because at first I was like, man, they aren't even giving me that sense of flight. But maybe about an hour and a half in, I was like, you know what? They're starting to get it. Now I'm actually getting interested in what's going on.
There's a battle in the beginning that was pretty impressive. That I was like, okay, wow, cool. I mean, I was like praying to see the Memphis Belle flying because I mean the way those battles were shot were so incredible that when I was watching this, that was my bar. The only thing is that sometimes it felt like I was like, okay, wow, I do feel like I'm watching a little too much CGI. I mean, it looked too sleek, not gritty enough for me. But the battle towards the middle. I want to say it was the battle after when they had to do the shingle operation. Right. Looked incredible. It really did look incredible, and you do get a sense of that camaraderie with all the pilots. It's just the last battle that they had though when they were protecting the bombers was by far like the weakest, and it was the most sad. Yeah, it was the most non-climactic, only because they get you really ready for it because they're telling you, okay, we're introducing the ME-262, which is like the jets that the Germans had, and so you're expecting like something incredible, especially when they have this guy who's like their Darth Vader, the Darth Vader of the Nazis. Like it should have been Michael Fassbender.
Complete with honestly, facial scar.
It really, scar. He has like the most villainous dialogue. Like,
it's the Red Baron.
Burn in hell.
I love there's actually a point where he just sees the plane coming in the distance and goes, "This should be easy. These guys are amateurs." How the fuck do you know?
There's a scene where the guy was like, "I have you now," and I'm like, okay, this is like building up to something that should be like pretty incredible as far as spectacle, but it goes out on a whimper that towards the end of the film, I was like, that's it? Are we going to go into another battle now? Because I'm still waiting for that epic last battle.
I'm listening to all the complaints here, and we keep throwing George Lucas's name about, and we all know that he's producer, but we might be giving people the impression that we think he's the director. And I think there's a lot of people who do think he's the director. And
well, you know what? He did a lot of pickup shots for this movie. He actually went in and directed a lot of pickup shots.
Well, he's not the build director here. It's a guy named Anthony Hemingway, who we had mentioned before has not directed, I think, a feature film until now. Beforehand, he's directed a lot of diverse television, but does it feel like it has a television feel for a lot of it outside of the dogfights?
Yes,
yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah, and that's too bad because I mean, you could tell that the actors, especially the two main actors, which I think they're probably by far the most interesting, is Lightning and Easy.
Yeah.
Watching those scenes, you could tell those guys. You can really see those guys like working outside of whenever they have their breaks. It's like, okay, let's try to make this scene work for us, because when you watch the rest of the actors, it's kind of like they're kind of just reading the script.
There was one other actor, and this is a place where it fell down, because there was one other guy, the one who spoke up, who was the most belligerent, like, man, they ain't gonna let us do nothing. And that guy only had like 2-3 scenes, almost cameos, and yet I thought he was really strong in those. I was like, you know what? If there's a guy who could break out from this and be the next Denzel Washington, it's that guy. But he wasn't on there enough for me to even know what his character was.
But the most disappointing though was really seeing Cuba Gooding Jr. and Terrence Howard really just kind of be there as like, yeah, we're the big stars that they managed to just scrap up.
Yeah.
But there's nothing for us to do here.
Yeah. Terrence Howard comes in and gives pretty much the same self-righteous speeches that he did in Pride. It's almost the same thing. And Cuba Gooding Jr., they gave him Douglas MacArthur's pipe to suck on and just kind of mug at the camera.
Maybe that was Popeye's pipe.
Yeah. I was like, you know, you're supposed to that motherfucker was chomping on that pipe every time. Like the sound. That's another thing to complain about actually, which I was really like appalled by because I'm like, okay, like I'm imagining ILM worked on this, but I don't know if it was the theater, but there are scenes where you see you see like the P-40s and the P-51s. There's moments in the movie where you see them firing their guns, but when I was watching it, I noticed, wow, I see bullets, but I don't hear any sound.
Oh, I know.
I don't hear that incredible sound like you should.
The sound design was terrible.
It was the worst.
The editing across the board was really bad. There's a lot of just like scenes that they start, and you're like, okay, well, they're going to go into this subplot, and they'll be like 5 seconds long to show you a subplot. There's a subplot. Okay, it's done. Next scene. And
somebody on YouTube did the sound because they forgot to put in like just the noise of the engine. Where I'm like,
I know,
wow, really? Not even the engine? I mean, because everything sounds muted except for the music.
And we were in where we were seeing it was digital projection, and you could hear like how the sound was layered, and yet like you're right, there was important sounds, the guns firing and the sound of the engines that weren't there. It should have been rumbling.
Damn, man, this is coming from the guy that did THX sound too.
And, you know what?
Yeah, no shit. I mean, he would be pissed.
They obviously didn't do a second editing run on this because I gotta tell you, like we all agreed that some of the dialogue was really wooden here, and some of it was delivered really wooden. And the worst line in the whole film is delivered by one of the white bomber pilots who says, "I sure hope those red tail guys come back next time." Just like that.
Yeah, he's not
and
fucking
the worst
kidding.
part is he has a mask on.
He's not
they could have
fucking kidding.
redubbed it.
Well, let me ask you something. How was old racist as Bryan Cranston in this? And when I say racist, I mean in the
he's
movie.
not even
He's
in
it for 30 seconds.
Not even in it.
I mean, he's on it. He's in it enough to be racist and get the audience worked up. But it is only 30
It's like
seconds.
they bring him up for a second. He's like, "Nigger," and he's gone.
I know. They should have dressed him up as a Ku Klux Klan guy. I mean, he really should have been in a Klan outfit.
But the racial elements are kind of embarrassingly, like, weirdly lopsided like that anyway. They just throw them out there to get the crowd worked up every once in a while. And then when it's turned around, the whole, like, you know what, we respect you guys now because you're good pilots, even though we were just white assholes the last scene. It rings so false that it's just embarrassing.
It's almost like they go a long way forgetting about the racial element and go like, oh shit, I forgot we got to throw some of that in. Somebody do something.
Yeah. Oh, and the best part is when somebody cues that, hey, somebody do something. That is the most laughable, worst thing. I mean, honestly, like these scenes, some of these scenes should win a Razzie Awards because there's a great scene where the guys are flying in the bombers and they turn around and they go, oh, who are these guys? Oh my God, a black guy is flying a plane. Oh my God, what is Hitler throwing at us now? It's psychological warfare. What are we gonna do? Oh, but you know, okay, but the thing is, we mentioned a lot of complaints. I will say one good thing though, and Corey, you're gonna fucking love this, dude. Guess what?
What?
A black man gets to get with the white woman for once in this
shit,
movie.
better than sex. What y'all talking about? Why are we doing this review?
Not just the white woman, but Kim Possible.
Oh man,
Right.
yeah.
I get excited about some weird stuff sometimes.
But yeah, you see them, Corey. You see them kissing and everything, dude, licking lips, doing all kinds of dirty things. Yeah.
And then they lynched his ass right afterwards.
Yeah.
During the credits when they were rolling.
It's funny because you're waiting for that scene to happen.
Well, you know what? I mean, it does sound like you did say some good things. I mean, you're saying what everybody's saying, that the dogfight scenes are good, and even those have moments where they look too fake or they're not up to par. But most of what you're saying is what everybody else is saying about it. The dialogue hokey, the story is not that strong. These characters the camaraderie could be greater between them if they seem like they were a little more fleshed out. Is that the consensus among everybody here?
I'd say pretty much. I mean, you know, to put a finer point on it, Cyrus hated it, and he can list all his reasons for hating it. And ain't a single one of them I could go like, dude, you're wrong. I could just say that
didn't bother you as much.
It didn't bother me as much, and I found things about it to like. I mean, there's a point about an hour into it when I'm like, you know what? Despite everything I'm saying about it, I actually am genuinely entertained. Mm-hmm. It's just, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say I would give this a rental. I don't know if it's a medium rental or a low rental, but it's just so very TV movie. Yeah. I wish George Lucas didn't have a hand in it at all, because it would stand or fall on its own. But the things that are wrong with it are things that are classically wrong with his productions.
Yeah. It's funny, I can say that in reverse. I understand why the things didn't bother you as much, but this movie committed the cardinal sin of an action-oriented film for me, which is that I was bored throughout the whole thing. I mean, even the dog fights, I'm like, okay, you've seen one, you've pretty much seen them all here. And even worse, the story is so sloppily written that every time they get sent out on a mission, they're like, it's very important we do this thing in the mission. They never end up doing it. They always go and say, hey, look at that over there. They go do some other thing, and then they go back to base, and they're like, great job. And you're like, but they didn't do what you told them to.
I know, but they didn't do it with style.
I mean, honestly,
they made it look good.
Honestly, the only reason I'm not giving this movie a fuck you, because I really think it's that bad, is because I was laughing out loud at how embarrassingly bad some of the dialogue and stuff like that was. I mean, there are multiple points I laughed out loud.
You kind of laughed at inappropriate moments, especially when black people are dying and Cyrus is right next to me laughing. Every time I looked at him, I kept seeing Cyrus in a Nazi outfit. And I was just like, oh my God, dude, will you stop it? I'm sitting right next to you. Yeah, I know. It's like, look at the colored boys. I know.
It's just some old bullshit to me.
All right. All right, co-host.
And this is okay. And I'm in the middle between these guys right now, and I'm really siding with you, Leon. I completely agree with you. And Cyrus, I completely agree with all your complaints. And it is ripping me the fuck apart.
You're tearing me apart.
Because you know what? Stop it. But the thing is,
agree with me, co-host. I have candy.
Come into the light, co-host.
Oh,
don't join the Sith.
Don't tell me that.
I got all the white women.
Oh, you do? Oh, my God.
Yeah, those white women have you cutting their yards.
Yeah, I know. Do you have black women, too? I don't want to be labeled a racist. You're already wearing that goddamn Nazi uniform. I don't know what to do. But I mean, I'll give you this though. I mean, the movie does have its moments, and there are very small moments. I mean, this is a movie that you almost wish they would chop up, put on the History Channel about the Tuskegee Airmen, and have like little bits of this movie just kind of inserted all the way throughout. But as a whole, it's kind of, there's parts where it's just excruciatingly bad. I'll give it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna give it some bullshit.
Yay!
He's like, I'm sorry, black people.
Quiet you. Man, I'll make it up to you someday.
You know what? It's funny because George Lucas, I get the feeling he's going around and telling people like, oh man, they don't want my movie because I'm black. No, man, it's bad. All right.
Junior, get out of the plane! How you like that, Mr. Hitler?
The expectations placed upon you men are high. Heavenly Father, we ask that you send your angels down to surround us as we fly through the sky.
Through adversity! To the stars! From the last plane, to the last bullet, to the last minute, to the last man, we fight! We fight! We fight!